Hi everyone, this is Againstime with GrinderSchool.com. Today I'll be doing a hand history review of several nine-handed sit-and-goes placed recently by Grinder School member PGM 1971 on PokerStars. This will be sort of an exploration of the recent change that PokerStars has made in their sit-and-go structure where they start including the antes in the very first blind level. We'll also get a chance to look at a different player's perspective by reviewing their hand histories here. As I generally do, I'll be skipping over most of the hands that this player doesn't become involved with early on. The exception to that will be to comment on opening ranges where he may make a different choice on whether or not to become involved than I might have made myself. So we'll go ahead and get started here. As most of you are aware of, the structure here is going to be 50% to first, 30% to second, 20% to third, as is the case with all the nine-handed tournaments. But the ante being introduced earlier on can sometimes make a difference. Okay, it looks like we get a limp, a min raise, and an all in here. Obviously nothing you can do with queen 10, just let it go. Okay, ace-deuce suited here is a little too far out of position to raise into 6 players. I don't know too many regs, even of the loose aggressive style, who are going to be loose enough to raise this here, and I wouldn't recommend doing so. I'll raise it into 5 players, which is also considered fairly loose. Most regs won't even start doing that until the 5100. However, I definitely wouldn't recommend raising it here. It looks like PGM folds it. He's a little bit tighter than I am, so that's what I expected to happen here. Okay, he raises up ace-king. Obviously, this is okay regardless of position. You'll notice he chooses to make it 3x here. I have no problem with a 3x raise. I have noticed from some hand history reviews of this player that sometimes he'll make it 125, sometimes he'll make it 150. I'm not sure quite yet what the difference seems to be. I've noticed that it's more likely to be 150 if it's coming from early position or if it's a big hand. It's more likely to be 125 in later positions with more marginal hands. My recommendation would be to use a consistent raise size. I think it gives a lot of information to observant opponents about what your hand strength may be. And let's say I had ace-king here myself and I were in middle position. Well, I could just fold that ace-king pre-flop and know that I was making a good decision because I know his raising range for 3x raises in early position to be something like Jack's ace-king, and ace-king isn't good against that range. And if I'm able to just fold ace-king outright, knowing exactly what your hand range is, it's too much information that you're giving away. And so I would recommend making a consistent raise size. There's nothing inherently wrong with 150. It's just that if you make it 150, you need to always make it 150. The same thing with the 125 raise. So that would be my suggestion here. Looks like it's a flat call from this player and another one as well. And you'll see a flop of 6-4 king rainbow. He c-bets 463. This is a little larger than I would recommend. He's going to get weaker players who have a hand like king queen and king jack to get all in here. However, against players who have, like, say, pocket sevens, pocket eights, even pocket queens, are going to be able to let this go quite easily, whereas if you made a smaller bet of, say, 300, they might call. So it kind of forces them into the right decision. Once again, he will stack a player with king queen or king jack, but he'd probably stack that player anyway if they're willing to commit outright here. So you're getting a lot less value against weaker hands, and you're guaranteeing you're losing your whole stack against the set as well. He gets a raise. He faces a raise here. I expect this player to have king jack plus or a set. They do get all in. He shows king queen, so pretty much as expected here. Good thing he didn't have king jack. Another ace king here. This is too deep to just shove. I've noticed a little bit of a tendency for PGM to avoid post-flop play, especially out of position, by just shoving pre-flop in situations where really you can make a smaller 3-bet. I'd recommend making it like 275, even 300 here. Shoving all in is too deep. The effective stacks are like 25 blinds here. And this player is even deeper. I mean, this is way too deep to shove all in through this player. So I'd make a smaller 3-bet here. Looks like you'll get a fold. There's a couple ways you can play this. He's been pretty active in the last few hands, which may have an effect on the approach. I would generally make this 350 and 3-bet it against the late position cutoff raise, take the initiative in the hand with guaranteed position with a hand that doesn't really play particularly well post flop. Gives yourself some pre-flop fold equity, and by taking the initiative, it'll be easier to take on the flop. By making it 350, if he's called, he'll also be able to c-bet without committing himself to the hand. So it's an excellent 3-bet opportunity. He could also flat here. He would be getting slightly better than 10 to 1, like 11 to 1 odds here on a set, which isn't terrible. Looks like he folds. I wouldn't recommend folding. I think 3-betting to 350 is the best play. Flatting wouldn't be a bad play, especially considering his image right now. Folding is simply too tight. So that would be my recommendation. Looks like we'll move into the 40-80 blinds. Okay. A raise coming in for 5 players. I don't have my HUD stats up, obviously, because this is not a tournament that I played. In general, if this player is any bit aggressive at all, and he's been raising here, and he's getting a flat call, you could actually 3-bet shove pre. The effective stacks are going to be narrow enough that you can do that. So it's 320, 400, 440, 500 chips in here pre-flop is 1/6 of his stack, about 16%. You could shove pre. You could also flat this. That would be fine. I think that's what he chooses to do here. Either play is fine. Just don't fold. It's a little deeper than a lot of players will be comfortable shoving pre, but there is enough in the middle to make it worthwhile with the antes here, and that would be a little bit of a change that you could take advantage of. But flatting is certainly fine. You don't want to make a smaller 3-bet, like say to 500 here. It'd be very awkward to play post flop, especially out of position. So he does one of the 2 available plays at his disposal that I think are profitable by flatting. Flop is 8-3-3 rainbow, pretty good flop for pocket 10s. It's like he checks, gets about 240, and check raises here to 800. This is very aggressive on a dry board. I don't know that I much like it. I think it only gets action from an 8 or pocket 9s or a hand that beats him. I don't really see on this dry board the need to check raise. There's no real draws available. I think check calling or leading out would be better. He does win the hand outright, but he may have been able to get more value from it had he approached it in a different way. Looks like he limps here. That's fine. This stack depth limping here is perfectly fine. And he'll lead out for 176 into 220 with his vulnerable top pair and take it down. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Probably the exact way I would have played it. The c-bet here when he, let's see. Yeah, I probably would have played it almost identically. I would have bet 150, but I mean it's essentially the same. So I can't find anything different about this at all. Let's see what happens here. Okay, raise and then a fold. That's exactly what you should do. Okay, we get a just over min raise from the cutoff from J Mariano 10. He holds ace 4 off here. Effective stacks are narrow enough for a 3-bet shove. He chooses not to do so. Once again, I don't have my HUD stats available to know whether I agree or disagree with that. In general, I would lean towards folding here, which is the play he makes. There will be some regs that a shove is warranted here. But generally, when you have these weak offsuit ace rags, you're wanting to have the raise come from even the button and to be in one of the blinds, so you don't have two players behind you who can snap off your shove, as well as the initial raisers. So I like the fold here in most cases. Pocket eights, he chooses to raise to 300, just under 3x. That's fine. Once again, the raise size, no problem with that at all. Just be consistent with it. No defense. Fold the king 3 suited. That is correct. You should be raising a suited king from the cutoff or later in the 60-120 blind levels would be my recommendation. This probably isn't going to be good enough to call. I'd recommend a fold. He does fold. Not much for hands here for a second. So he'll get a walk here. Picks up pocket aces. Now we're six-handed. Four-handed will be the bubble, as most of you know. He makes it 480. No, actually, I'm happy I'm familiar with this program. He makes it 400. The program will add the blind size onto your actual raise if you're in the blinds. So 400 is actually a good raise size here. Really, it's a shove or fold spot. If you're playing against anyone who's played with you at all, you would just shove this because it looks more suspicious to make this small raise and it would drive away action. But against an unknown player, I think the 400 raise is perfectly valid and in fact probably the most profitable way to approach it. You're more likely to get action if they don't know you. If they do know you, you should play strictly shove fold with your entire range here. He does get a fold either way. Probably this isn't going to be good enough to call. I wouldn't be surprised if Jay Mariano is a reg. It's my take on it so far. I'm not sure how good of a reg he would be, but I think he's probably a reg here by how he's playing. In which case, King 10 might be good enough to call from the big blind, but you don't want to call here from the button with two players behind you. He does choose to fold here. Fold the 7-8 suited. Yeah, I think Jay Mariano is a reg from what he's doing here. It's easy to find who the regs are because they're making cost-effective steals in the later blinds. They're playing shove fold or re-steal fold at the shorter effective stack sizes. It's a strategy that non-regs generally won't do, but it is the most profitable way to play. Okay, King Queen is going to be good enough to call this shove. He does call it. Was King 4 good enough to shove? It was for 6.5 blinds. So both players did the right thing here, and we have inevitable collision. Looks like the King 4 will get lucky and catch 4. PGM will still be in the tournament, however, with about 13 blinds, which is perfectly fine for open shoves and re-steals. I expect him to shove over the top with the Ace King, and he does. This was a good shove with the Jack 8 suited. Looks like PGM will win this collision. You can actually shove this Jack Deuce suited. I don't think he does, but this is actually a profitable shove right here. He neglects to take it. He's a little bit tighter than I am. In terms of post-flop play, that's fine. In terms of shoving or folding, it doesn't really matter what your style is. There's a profitable line that you can shove against certain opponents, and you should take advantage of all profitable spots. So this is a missed shove opportunity that you should take. It's not a stylistic thing, so you should be shoving this here. I would recommend folding. This guy is min raising from the hijack into two players who are very short stack. I would guess that he's ahead of A7 suited. I don't think it's quite good enough to make a re-steal here. I would just let it go, which he does. Fold the King 4. Okay, it looks like we'll move into the bubble now. 3 deuce off is not a shove here. It looks like from the bottom, like where it's highlighted, he does shove it, but he shouldn't shove it. Whereas the Jack Deuce suited was a missed shove. This is a shove taken that should not have been taken. It's not profitable to shove into a 4 blind stack with 3 deuce offsuit. It's just simply not. Their calling range would have to be just awful, like extremely tight for this to be a good shove. I would not make this shove. You can only start shoving any 2 with about 2.5 blinds. With the ante here, maybe 3. But at 4 blinds, this is the ideal stack size to not shove this hand because they're very likely to call. There's no reason for you to take the risk. And 3 deuce off is one of the worst hands you can collide with. 7 deuce off and 3 deuce off are as bad as it gets. So I would fold this. Fold the 5-4 off, which he does. Fold the 5-3, he does. I'm happy he didn't limp here. It's not even worth 100 chips. Of greater importance is Gidra's willingness to limp the button. I've said this many times. I'll say it again because it's worth saying. There are no situations in poker where if you're the first player entering the pot that you should be limping the button, period. It's always a mistake. It's never the right play. And this is a huge tell of not necessarily a bad player. There are good players who will limp the button. I've seen winning regs who do it, but it's a leak in their game, and it's usually a tell of an inexperienced player. And this is not a good way to play. He's limp calling with 9-8 suited is a terrible play. He should raise it up here and be willing to call this shove, but you don't limp call with what figures to be the worst hand. It makes no sense. It's a losing play. Okay, it looks like they'll move into the money here. He'll probably fold here, which I think is the right decision. He'd be raising into the big stack through a short stack who he would be committed by odds to call should he shove. So I would fold it. He does fold it. Fold the 3-8 off, which he does. Okay, blinds have gone up here. He's got about 14 blinds left. 13 now. Shove the ace king. This is a mistake. When a player is like 6 blinds deep, making the small raise into them actually looks stronger than just shoving. It's suspicious looking. It's going to get a lot of folds. It makes it look like you have a big hand, which he does. You just play shove fold to these stack sizes against any opponent all the time. Even against an unknown player, it's going to look weaker to shove this hand than to do this raise. So I would just shove it. You get more action that way, and you want action. So this is a mistake. Don't make this small raise into a short stack this short. If you're 10 blinds or less, blind versus blind, you play shove fold with all your hand range, period. Fold to king 5, which he does. I'd probably limp here because this player's been pretty passive. I'd try to get in for 150 because they're getting excellent odds. There's 675 plus 150. I mean, you're really getting excellent odds here to come in. I would come in with the queen 6 suited with a limp. He does let it go, and player checks behind here. You can just shove the jack 10 off. There's 2 ways to play this here. If you raise it up, these players have enough chips that you can fold if they go all in. So making it like 600, that's fine. However, you can profitably shove this hand. And as I've said before on the bubble, you're wanting to take spots like as shoves that you could play post flop in other scenarios that have like marginal plus EV results. Meaning like, why make a small raise with this hand and give your opponents a chance of coming over the top and making you fold it, or play it post flop awkwardly and get below 10 blinds when you can just guaranteed have a plus EV spot to shove it? I'd take the guarantee and just shove it. It looks like he chooses to fold here. This is close. I think this player's shove range is too tight for this to be a great call. However, it's only a 5 blind shove, and he has a hand that shows down well. I'd probably say fold it, but it is close. You would call it if it weren't a bubble spot. Easy shove with the ace-6. Easy call with the 10s. Easy shove with the jack-3 suited. And he'll get called here with the king-queen. That's fine as well. They'll take third in this game. We'll move on to the next. This one's a little bit shorter. I think he actually takes 4th or 5th in this one, but it has a lot of good spots that I wanted to talk about. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Folds with this raise, obviously. Even with the raise and the call, don't be calling here with queen 5 suited. Your range of involvement should be The hands you should get involved with, not necessarily to say all with a flat call, but the hands you should be willing to play here are any pair, any suited ace, decent offsuit aces, probably like ace 9 off or better, and maybe ace 5 off. Um, King 8 suited plus, maybe like king 10 off. Jack 8 suited plus, jack 10 off, 10 7 suited, 10 9. You get the idea. Decent suited connectors after that would be fine. Even with the odds here, the queen 5 suited is going to be a fold. This should be a limp. This is too tight. As I mentioned, he's a little bit tighter than I am. I don't really consider this stylistic, though. There's 225 chips in here. It costs you 25 to call. I think it's a pretty clear call with the jack 8 suited. He steals from the button with the king 3 off. No problem with that at all. He makes it 150 here. Just want to make sure he's consistent with the raise size. He does get a defend. Good board to c-bet, a good c-bet size. He gets check raised, and I assume he'll let it go, and he does. So nothing wrong with that at all. Just didn't work out for him. Blinds are 40-80 now. He gets a limp here. I shove all in pre-flop on this limp. I think it's a great play. He's got about 12, 13 blinds here. It's a good spot to abuse loose passive limpers, and queen 9 off is actually surprisingly good in this spot. He does shove all in. I like that. Once again, I think it's absolutely the right play, and it works. He accumulates a nice amount of chips for himself. He's got about 15 blinds here. He can shove it, or he can make a small raise. Both plays are valid. He chooses to shove it. I think that's fine. You could go either way. There's arguments for both. A lot of players, a lot of good regs even, who have really long careers, will play shove fold at 15 blinds, blind versus blind against everybody. I don't inherently see a problem with that. It's definitely a profitable strategy, pretty much against almost anyone. And king jack would be in the range of hands you'd be shoving there. The hand does play well post flop, however, and if you're up against a non-reg who isn't likely to come over the top, you may be able to get more profit out of it by making a small raise. But once again, both strategies are valid, both are profitable, and he will take it down, accumulate some chips. He gets a limp here from this player in the hijack. He limps behind. This is actually an excellent choice. He's 16 blinds deep now. So shoving over a single limp at 16 blinds deep, in my opinion, is too deep. I generally recommend to players to shove over a single limp at 14 or less, and to make the isolation raise at 15 or more after a single limper. So this would be my recommendation. He also has position guaranteed post-flop and a hand that plays well post-flop. And he could also be getting trapped because he's shoved several times recently. So a combination of all factors lead towards this being the best choice, which he does make. Jack 7-5, 2 spades, fairly coordinated flop. Gets about 160 here and just shoves in. That's fine. There's certainly enough out here to win. It's over 500 chips. It's about 40% of his stack on the table. I think that's fine. He just shoves in to try to capture it now. Looks like he'll take it down. He's accumulated a nice chip stack for himself, back up to 1,700. Blinds have gone up to 6,120 though. So he's got just under 15 blinds here. Fold the 4-7. Couple great shove and isolation spots he's taken in this tournament. Even though I think he finishes worse in this tournament, I think that his decisions, the quality of them, are even better. He chooses to fold here. That's pretty reasonable. He's got 4 players behind him, one of whom is very short, another one is right under 10 blinds. So you don't really want to limp here and have one of them shove on you. So limping's out. Shoving over an early position limp into 6 players is pretty suspect. It could very well be a trap, even though we know this player to be loose passive. And these players are likely to get involved because of their stack depth. So I actually think folding is the best play, and that's what he chooses to do. Another good decision from PGM. Okay. down to six-handed here. Just fold. That's what he does. Okay, I'm not sure what he'll do here. I wouldn't fold it. He may do so. He doesn't fold it. That's good. Okay, folding is the worst decision, just straight up. Shoving over the limp is perfectly valid, especially since this player likes to limp a lot. Also, limping in the small blind is valid because it's a hand that plays well post flop, and it's only a 60 chip contribution. Um, I don't see any problem with either play. I'd probably lean towards the limp because he's already shoved quite a few times, and this player may be trapping him. Also, 9-8 offsuit isn't the best hand to ISO shove here. So I like the limp. I think it's the best play. Shoving would be second, and folding would be the worst. Looks like he gets a raise here, and he can just quietly let it go for only 60 chips contributed. So good result there. Okay, blinds have gone up to 8160. PGM is now less than 10 blinds deep effectively. All of his plays should be shoves or folds with no exceptions until he accumulates some chips. Well, there'll be a couple small blind exceptions to that, but generally shove or fold. Just check behind here in the big blind. And with no hand, no draw, I expect him to just let this go. And he does. King 6 off is a super standard shove here. In fact, considering this player's involvement level and his looseness, I would probably shove any 2 in this spot just to avoid the blinds going through me and to take advantage of a heads-up scenario with a lot of chips out there to win in comparison with the stack size. There's 360 chips out there, about a third of his stack. So I'd probably shove any 2 here. He shoves the King 6. That's the right decision. Fold the deuce 9, well, obviously after this shove. Ace Jack is just going to be a shove. That's what he does. I like that he doesn't try to make a small, like, little cute raise. You just simply don't do that. Play shove fold at less than 10 blinds. It looks suspicious otherwise. And if you're making only small raises with big hands, it polarizes your range. And even unsophisticated opponents will catch on to that and use that information against you. So I like that he just shoves it here and takes it down. This is a shove as well. I'm actually surprised he shoved it. It's about 11 blinds deep. I've seen him in other spots not take this situation, but it's a great shove spot. You could even shove deuces here just to give you an idea, but you can certainly shove sixes. That's exactly what you should do. It's a good spot. Okay, we have sixes again here, but blinds have gone up. He has 10 blinds, so shoving 10 blinds into 5 people is going to be a standard shove. He misses this one. Which is why I commented on that. 10 blinds, this is a rule that was taught to me long ago when I first started to become serious about sit and goes by a professional sit and go player, and it's a rule that I've pretty much stuck to ever since. I found it to be true regardless of the looseness of the players behind me, and I'm going to tell you now, and it's something that I would recommend you do very strongly because I've found few, if any, exceptions to this over the course of 5-6 years of experience since then. If you have 10 blinds and there are 5 players or fewer behind you, you shove any pair. And that's been pretty much true it hasn't changed over 5 or 6 years of experience. So you shove this hand, you would shove deuces here. So sixes is actually an easy shove to make. I just check behind with the 3 deuce. I'd be looking to shove over this limp with a lot of hands, but this is not one of them. And I expect him to just fold here. Yeah, he does. Queen 10 off isn't quite good enough to really shove over an early position limp. For only 100 chips and there being, 750, 850 in the middle, 8.5 to 1. Just flat this, just limp in the small blind. This is one of those few exceptions I was talking about. And that's what he does here. It's the right decision. There's almost 1,000 in the middle. He's got 1,500 behind. He just open shoves this. Let me think about how I feel about this. It's not what I typically do here. He doesn't have enough chips to check raise and get a fold effectively, so check raise is out. Leading out will get a lot of flats because it's such a coordinated board, and he may not want to commit on a lot of turn cards. check calling is an option. So leading out is not a good decision. Check raising is not a good decision. So we're left with check calling and open shoving. Yeah, I think his decision is actually quite good here. He's betting three halves the size of the pot, which is a little steep. However, there'll be a lot of draws available on this board. He'll be able to make them pay against the odds to draw. He has a fairly strong hand in this situation. The likelihood that someone has a jack with three opponents isn't extremely high. I think I'd probably check, wait for them to make an action, and decide where I stand on whether I want to call or not. But I think leading out for this amount is still a pretty solid play. Certainly plus EV in the long run. So it's not what I'm typically accustomed to, but I think it's a good decision nonetheless, and it works out for him here. Dude, this ace-7 offsuit would have been a shove, even though he's 12 blinds, 12 and a half blinds deep. These three players are all under 10. However, once this player shoves, he can just let it go, which is what he does. A lot higher quality of decisions in this tournament for PGM compared to the first one. This is a much better tournament for him, even though the result isn't quite as good. As we all know, though, the quality of your decisions is not directly tied to the result of a single tournament. It is directly linked to your results in the long run, but you can play a tournament very well and have poor results, and you can have a tournament where you play very poorly and have excellent results. This is also a shove. I like that he makes it. These players are all under 10 blinds. This is exactly what you should do. Don't make a smaller raise here, just shove, and he does. It's correct. We get a limp and a min raise from a loose passive player. This is a big hand. He should let the ace-9 go, and he does. We get a limp from a loose passive player who's also short stack now in the 153. Let the queen-8 go. Hold this as well. All right, looks like this will be the last hand. Easy shove with 9-8 off. Standard call with king-jack. Nothing any player did wrong. Looks like it'll work out for the king-jack. So I hope you enjoyed that. A lot of good spots taken correctly by PGM in the second tournament. The first tournament, a little bit on both sides. Some good decisions, some areas where better decisions could have been made. For any of you who have questions, feel free to contact me at againstime@gmail.com, and you can use the same email address for training as well. Thank you.